What's the worst graduation present you can possibly imagine? A bad card? Nothing at all. Well, I guarantee this one tops them all. This is the story of how my family tried to erase me, right before the biggest moment of my life. Stick around. And if you love stories where the underdog gets the ultimate win, do me a solid and hit that subscribe button right now. This envelope changed everything. It wasn't just paper. It was a verdict. My mother, Diane, slid it across the pristine linen tablecloth, her diamond ring catching the restaurant's chandelier light. My sister, Avery, leaned in, her smartphone already raised and recording, a predatory smile fixed on her face, pretending this was a moment worth remembering. The entire restaurant, Maison Lumiere, seemed to fall quiet. Even the hired string quartet hesitated mid-note. Inside that heavy, embossed envelope wasn't a graduation check. It wasn't a card. It was a disownment letter. We, the undersigned, hereby release and relinquish all familial obligations and TIs. With Taylor Bennett, it was signed by all of them. My father, Charles. My mother, Diane. My sister, Avery. This was my graduation present. They watched me, hungry for a reaction, for tears, for a scream, for the scene they could dine out on for weeks. Avery's thumb hovered over the screen, ready to capture the breakdown. I read the words. I let the silence stretch. Then, I folded the letter once, twice. I placed it neatly beside my untouched water glass. Thank you, I said. My voice was even, quiet, and clear. For the closure. Avery blinked, her smile faltering. The camera lowered just an inch. You're thanking us? My father, Charles, cleared his throat, tapping into that rehearsed boardroom authority. Taylor, don't make this harder than it needs to be. This is a formality. We're moving forward. I agree, I said, standing up and smoothing my blazer. It is time to move forward. My mother's face tightened, her practiced smile replaced by genuine confusion. Darling, sit down. We haven't even ordered. People are watching. Let them, I replied. I left my napkin on the chair and turned to leave. I didn't look back. As I pushed through the heavy glass doors, I heard Avery's voice, sharp and frustrated. Well, what am I supposed to do with this video? I walked out into the cool night air. They thought they had written my ending. They thought they had finally deleted the variable that didn't fit their equation. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that this piece of paper was just their signature on a deal I had already closed. They had no idea that while they were signing me away, I was busy signing a $6.2 million acquisition. They just gave me the one thing I was missing, a clean exit. Growing up, I learned early that in our house, love came with performance metrics. My father, Charles Bennett, measured worth in return on investment. My mother, Diane, measured it in appearances. My sister, Avery, just happened to be the perfect balance of both. She was the golden child, the effortlessly charming heir to their empire of expectation. Their lavish dinner parties. I was always introduced last. Avery is a senior associate in New York. My mother would beam, her hand resting proudly on my sister's shoulder. Then her tone would soften, almost apologetically. And this is Taylor. She's still studying. The same pause, the same polite, sympathetic smile as if I were a late project, still waiting for approval, forever incomplete. Guests would nod, glance at me briefly, then redirect their attention to the champagne flutes and their own carefully curated conversations. I learned to smile back quietly, predictably. My role was to be seen but not heard, present but not prominent. Our dining room always smelled of cedar polish and unspoken expectation. The massive crystal chandelier above the polished table threw fractured light across my water glass, scattering tiny, broken halos that never quite settled. I used to count them, finding a quiet rhythm in their chaos, while my father discussed markets and mergers, and my mother rehearsed gratitude to donors who mistook vanity for virtue. Avery thrived in that world. She learned how to glide between conversations, when to laugh softly, when to tilt her head just enough to look engaged. I studied her like a science. Every gesture earned approval. Every pause was calibrated. I, on the other hand, worked nights at a cafe near campus, The espresso machine hissed louder than any conversation at home. There, people didn't care about last names or legacies. They just wanted their orders right and their names spelled correctly. I liked that. It was measurable, clean, honest. One Sunday after a particularly long shift, I came home to find Avery sitting at the kitchen counter, her laptop open, my father pouring wine. "We were just talking about you," he said, swirling the glass. "Avery thinks you're wasting your time behind a coffee counter." Avery didn't even look up from her screen. "It's not wasting, Dad. It's character building." Her tone was light, but the edge was there, sharp enough to slice through the polite air. I laughed softly, pretending it didn't sting. "I'm funding my tuition," I said. My father shrugged, dismissing it with a wave of his hand. "Degrees don't pay bills, Taylor. Numbers do. Remember that." He always believed he was teaching me a lesson, but he had no idea I understood numbers better than anyone in that house, that I could build systems, track variables, model outcomes with an intuitive precision they couldn't grasp. But his attention was already drifting back to Avery, to the topics he found worthy of his time. After that night, I stopped trying to join their conversations. I just started watching, observing, collecting data in the quiet way that made sense to me. Still, there were moments I thought maybe things would change. Like when I earned a national research scholarship. I sent them the email, attached a press clipping, and waited for something, a phone call, a genuine burst of pride. My mother replied 6 hours later, "So proud of you, sweetheart. We have a gala tonight. Can we post about it tomorrow?" They never did. That was the day I understood something simple but permanent in my family. Attention was a currency, and I was always the unpaid intern in their empire. I remember the sound of the crystal glasses that night, how they clinked perfectly in rhythm, as if the house itself celebrated my invisibility. That was the night I learned my true place in this family, somewhere between silence and proof. Night I received the DISOWNMENT letter was just a formality. The real break had happened months earlier, in the quiet hum of a server rack, long after the campus cafe had closed. It started with my mentor, Dr. Alvarez. While my family saw a barista, she saw a systems analyst. She nominated me for the university's Young Leader in Technology Award, which came with a coveted speaking slot at the main commencement ceremony. When I sent the confirmation email to the family group chat, the reply was telling. Avery wrote back, "That's nice. Just try not to run long. We have dinner reservations right after." My father just sent a thumbs up emoji. They saw it as another quaint academic hobby. They had no idea what that award was for. It was for a project I'd built called Root Flow. What began as a small research assignment had evolved into a powerful data platform. I worked with 2 other students, Ethan on analytics and Maya on the UI, while I, the barista with an MBA, wrote the core algorithm. It was designed to help small logistics companies optimize delivery routes, cutting through the predatory pricing of larger corporations. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. The breakthrough came at 3:17 am one Tuesday, fueled by stale coffee. I ran a simulation that cut average fuel costs by 12%. I just leaned back, staring at the numbers on the screen. Proof. Tangible, undeniable proof. It wasn't a grade. It wasn't an integral. It was a solution. Dr. Alvarez pushed me to present it at the university's startup symposium. "You don't need to sell yourself, Taylor," she said, adjusting her glasses. "Just show them how it works. Let the data speak." It did. When the presentation ended, the applause was polite at first, then real. Afterward, a man in a tailored gray suit approached me, ignoring the flashier venture capitalists. He was Nathan Cole, the CEO of Northbridge Logistics, one of the biggest independent shipping firms in the country. He studied my graphs, his interest genuine. "You've built something scalable," he said, his tone measured. "But more than that, you've built something fair." Fair. It was a word I hadn't heard in my family's house in years. We met twice after that. The third time, he slid a folder across the table. Inside was a letter of intent. Northbridge wanted to acquire Root Flow for $6.2 million, plus a director-level position for me post-graduation, leading the integration. I didn't sign immediately. I read every clause, every subline, ensuring the system I'd built, the one built from silence, not privilege, would stay intact. When I finally signed, it wasn't triumph I felt. It was balance. It was the sound of a different kind of chandelier, one I had built myself, settling into place while my family was drafting their disownment papers. I was signing an acquisition deal. While they were booking a restaurant to publicly execute my place in the family, I was securing my future. So when my mother texted me 2 days before graduation, "Don't forget, we're all sitting in the front row for your little speech. We have a presentation for you afterward." I just smiled. They were bringing their letter, thinking it would define me. They had no idea I'd already signed something far more permanent. They thought they were walking into a finale. I knew we were walking into my commencement the morning of graduation. I woke before sunrise. The first pale light caught the corner of my desk, gleaming off 2 documents lying side by side, the embossed disownment letter from my family, and the final signed acquisition contract from Northbridge Logistics. One was an ending, the other a beginning. Both were proof. If you are ready to see this all come together, this is your last chance to subscribe before the big reveal. You don't want to miss what happens next. I didn't dress for them. I dressed for me. I put on my cap and gown, not as a student, but as an owner. The fabric felt like armor. I locked the door to my apartment, leaving the letter behind. It had served its purpose. Today wasn't about what they took away. It was about what I had built. When I arrived at the university, the energy was electric. A sea of black caps and gowns filled the plaza. And then I saw them, just as my mother had promised. They were in the front row, center seats. My father looked impatient, checking his watch as if this whole event was an inconvenience. My mother was scanning the crowd, her expression a perfect blend of polite interest and utter boredom. And Avery had her phone out, of course. She was probably already crafting the narrative, ready to film her disowned sister's pity speech. They looked so smug, so confident in their power. Have you ever had to face down someone who was 100% convinced they were better than you? It's the worst feeling, but also the most motivating. If you know that feeling, hit that like button right now. Let's send a little strength to everyone in that position. I ignored them and found my seat with the other graduates. I saw my mentor, Dr. Alvarez, in the faculty section. She saw me, and her eyes crinkled in a proud smile. She gave me a single knowing nod. Then I scanned the VIP section, and there he was, Nathan Cole, the CEO of Northbridge Logistics, looking over his program. He was in a sharp gray suit, blending in perfectly. My family, busy whispering and critiquing the decorations, didn't even glance his way. They had no idea who he was. They were so focused on their own small, cruel script that they couldn't see the major players already on the stage. The ceremony began. The opening remarks were a blur of future and potential. I watched my family. They clapped politely. Avery rolled her eyes when the dean started talking about academic achievements. They thought this was all just a formality before they could go to their celebratory dinner. Without me, then the dean stepped back up to the podium. And now, to present the Young Leader in Technology Award and deliver this year's keynote address. I saw Avery visibly sigh, probably texting her friends about how boring this was. The dean continued, "Please join me in welcoming the CEO of Northbridge Logistics, Mr. Nathan Cole." My heart hammered in my chest. It was happening. Nathan Cole stood up, and my family, for the first time, looked up at the stage with mild, dismissive curiosity. They still had no idea. What do you think is going to be the exact moment they realize what's happening? Comment your predictions below. Because part 5 is when the script gets flipped. Nathan Cole, CEO of Northbridge Logistics, walked confidently to the podium. His presence commanded attention, a stark contrast to the polite academic atmosphere. My family, still oblivious in the front row, now gave him their full, though still somewhat bored, attention. My father, Charles, even gave a slight nod of recognition, probably thinking Nathan was some industry contact there for a different purpose. My mother and Avery were busy checking their reflections in their phones. "Good morning, graduates, faculty, and distinguished guests," Nathan began, his voice clear and resonating. It is an honor to be here today, not just as a representative of Northbridge Logistics, but as someone who believes deeply in the power of innovation, hard work, and the quiet brilliance that often goes unnoticed. He paused, letting his words sink in. He wasn't talking about generic corporate platitudes. He was talking about my story. Today, we are here to celebrate not just the culmination of years of study, but the emergence of new leaders, he continued. And it is my distinct privilege to present the Young Leader in Technology Award to an individual whose groundbreaking work is already redefining how we approach complex logistical challenges. I saw my mother subtly adjust her posture, a flicker of pride for the university's achievement, not yet for any specific person. My father leaned back, still unimpressed. Avery, however, finally looked up from her phone, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. The applause was building, polite, expectant. This year's recipient, Nathan announced, his gaze sweeping across the graduates, then locking onto mine, created a data platform that has achieved truly remarkable results. Their algorithm, developed right here at this institution, promises to cut fuel costs, optimize delivery routes, and fundamentally change the landscape for small and medium-sized businesses. The applause grew louder, a genuine buzz now spreading through the auditorium. My family, however, remained frozen in their seats, their faces slowly transitioning from polite disinterest to a dawning, confused recognition. My mother's smile vanished. My father's brow furrowed. Avery's mouth dropped open slightly. They were trying to piece together the clues, but the puzzle pieces didn't fit their pre-written narrative. Northbridge Logistics was so profoundly impressed by this individual's vision and execution, Nathan continued, his voice gaining power, that we moved swiftly to acquire their company, Route Flow, for a significant sum, securing not just the technology, but the brilliant mind behind it. At the mention of Route Flow and acquisition, my father visibly stiffened. His eyes darted to my mother, then to Avery, then back to the stage, a look of incredulous disbelief slowly taking over his features. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Avery, for the first time in her life, looked completely, utterly speechless. They heard the words, but they couldn't process them. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not to me. Therefore, Nathan Cole declared, his voice ringing through the hall, it is with immense pride that I call to the stage for the Young Leader in Technology Award and to deliver your commencement address, Miss Taylor Bennett. The applause erupted, a thunderous wave that swept through the auditorium. I stood up, my cap and gown feeling heavier, more significant than ever before. As I walked towards the stage, every eye was on me. But my gaze was fixed on the front row. My parents and Avery were no longer smug. They were no longer dismissive. They were utterly, completely frozen. They watched me, their faces pale, their eyes wide with a shock that was so profound. It was almost comical. What do you think was going through their minds at that exact moment? The comments section is open. And don't forget to share this with anyone who loves a good moment of poetic justice, because part 6 is the speech they never saw coming. I walked across the stage, the sound of the applause roaring in my ears. I shook Nathan Cole's hand, accepting the heavy glass award. I turned to the podium, looking out at the thousands of faces, and then my eyes settled on the front row. My father's face was ashen. He looked like a man who had just watched his entire portfolio evaporate in seconds. My mother's hands were clasped so tightly her knuckles were white, her mask of polite composure completely shattered. And Avery was just staring, her phone hanging limply in her hand, the screen dark. They were statues of their own shock, trapped in the spotlight I now commanded. Thank you, Mr. Cole, I began, my voice steady, amplified by the microphone. Thank you, Dr. Alvarez, and thank you to the university. I took a breath. This wasn't the speech I had originally planned. I was supposed to talk about data. But looking at them, I realized the speech needed to be about a different kind of value. For most of my life, I continued, I was taught that worth is measured in appearances, in the right name, the right connections, the right investments. I was taught that if you don't fit the expected model, you are a liability, a variable to be deleted. I didn't look at them, but I felt them flinch. The entire front row was now staring at my family. A few people whispering, finally connecting the dots. I spent years in silence, at the edge of the frame, being told that my work was a waste of time. I was told degrees don't pay bills. Numbers do. I paused. So I focused on the numbers. While others were building their personal brands, I was building an algorithm. While others were attending galas, I was running simulations. I learned that true value isn't something that can be given to you at a dinner table or taken away. It's something you have to build yourself. Line by line, in the quiet and the dark, I held up the glass award. This award isn't just for me. It's for every person in this room who has ever been made to feel like the unpaid intern in their own life. To everyone who has been told they are still studying while they are actually building an empire, the crowd erupted in applause. A different kind now. It was knowing. It was passionate. My family, I said, finally letting my gaze land directly on them, gave me a graduation present last night. It was a letter, formally disowning me. They thought it was an ending, but they were right about one thing. It was time to move forward. A collective gasp went through the front rows. My father looked like he was going to be sick. My mother actually shut her eyes. Avery just looked small. They wrote me out of their story, I concluded, my voice ringing with finality. But in doing so, they gave me the freedom to write my own. And I find that my story, backed by a $6.2 million acquisition and a directorship at Northbridge Logistics, is one I much prefer. They can keep their name. I'll keep my work. Thank you. I walked off the stage to a standing ovation. I didn't look back. As I descended the stairs, I saw Dr. Alvarez wiping a tear from her eye. Nathan Cole clapped me on the shoulder. That's how you close a deal, director. I saw my family get up, not even waiting for the ceremony to end, and practically run for the exit, 100 pairs of eyes following them. Their humiliation was public, total, and delivered not with a shout, but with a time-stamped record of my success. Revenge didn't sound